Hello and welcome to the People's Podcast, the podcast aimed at tackling the stigma around refugees. On today's show, we have with us Luke Netherclift, who is the co-founder and project manager of the People's Backpack. Luke, it's really nice to have you on our show.
Hi Jay, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited for today's show.
So Luke is going to be talking about his project a little bit later on, but I thought it makes sense to start with, well, what is a refugee and why is this an important project? Why are we devoting time to this podcast? The word refugee is thrown around so often, I think, these days, that we can sort of lose sight of its own definition. So I suppose to return to definitions from the UN, a refugee is defined as someone who's been forced to flee his or her country because of persecution, war or violence. A refugee has a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership to a particular social group. I think that's all well and good, but we need to unpack that idea
I think
a lot further.
And so I think it's really important about the scale of this issue because the refugee crisis which we're currently facing is such a big problem throughout the whole world, with 40,000 people being displaced every single day, and that includes 70.8 million people forcibly displaced in 2018, whether that was due to conflict, persecution, maybe there wasn't enough resources in the place they're living and they had to flee their homes.
I mean, of that 70.8 million you mentioned, 25.9 million were officially classified as refugees. 25.9 million. I can't quite get my head around that number.
It's crazy. It's such a big number. And unfortunately, it's only really going to get worse because with climate change and the impact that it's having, and also the lack of inaction by governments about climate change, but that's probably another podcast in itself. We've really got going to have a exacerbate the issue because so many more people are going to be forcibly displaced due to climate change, whether that's sea levels rising or there's water shortages of food, lots of different problems that's going to have on top of these human issues such as conflicts.
I think really the aim of this podcast more generally is to focus on the human side of it, and the statistics really don't quite do the whole issue justice. You've got to remember, people don't want to leave their homes. The idea of leaving the country they grew up in, where their family is, that's a very difficult decision to make, but often they have no choice in doing so. And so I suppose what I'd encourage everyone to do, whether they're researching or just listening to the podcast, is to look beyond the stats, look beyond the numbers, because the numbers are very impersonal.
Yes.
What you've got to focus on is every single person who makes the journey to another country has a story. And I think it's really important that we don't lose sight of that story.
I think that's a really good point, Jay, because we've just said loads of numbers, lots of statistics, but at the end of the day, that doesn't really convey the human side of this refugee crisis, of the lives of refugees, of their mental health, what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. How do they live their life? Are they able to get a job? Are they able to find a home? Are they able to provide for their family? Are they able even to communicate with their family? What impact does that have on them? I think it's amazing what you're doing with the People's podcast, Jay, really trying to get these stories across and really highlight that side of things, because I really hope that can work to tackle the stigma and prejudice that refugees are facing at the moment.
So I suppose we've talked a lot about the problems. We've touched upon sort of the extent of the crisis. But I suppose a lot of people will be sitting at home wondering what on earth can they do about it. And so what Luke has done, Luke has sort of taken matters into his own hands, if I could use those words. And he's launched a project called the People's Backpack. So Luke, if you could just tell our listeners a little bit about what you hope to achieve and what the aim of the project is.
Yeah, so the goal of the project, the People's Backpack, which is also People's Podcasts and the People's Backpack, are part of the same social enterprise. I just want to put that out there. And so what we really want to do is support refugees in two main ways. So the first way in which we want to support them is through really trying to tackle the stigma and the prejudice that refugees are facing, and we want to do it through these podcasts, through our blogs, our social media, really trying to get the facts across, but more importantly the stories across of the lives of refugees. And the People's Backpack is also, we want to support refugee children, because we've done a lot of research, spoken to a lot of refugees and refugee organisations, and have found that if we can provide refugee children with an education pack and school supplies and a great looking backpack that they can show off, then that can really help to support and empower them for the future. Because an education is really a building block and sets a real benchmark for progression within life, whether that's making a career, finding a job, also essential communication skills, and just learning and developing as a person. And then we're really inspired by Tom's. They have a one-for-one business model where they sell a pair of shoes and then donate a pair of shoes to children from underprivileged backgrounds. And so what we want to do is sell backpacks which are made of sustainable materials, and then use the profits from those sales to donate a backpack to refugee children. It means that we're able to really make an impact, and we can keep sustaining the business so that we can continue to grow, expand, and ultimately make a bigger impact on the refugee crisis.
So this all sounds great, but if I can take you back right to the very beginning, how did this start? Did you wake up one morning and think, you know what, I'm going to launch a social enterprise? How did the process go?
Well, the whole journey, to take you back a long way back, I've always been really passionate about business and entrepreneurship, and my parents always encouraged it and really tried to nurture it. And when I was 12, I started my own cake business. So I would go up to people's doors, knock on their doors, speak to like pubs and local sports teams. I'd go and sell cakes to them. Amazing cakes, if I may add.
Do you still bake?
It was actually just revealed to my flat. I accidentally mentioned it to them because they're like, well, why haven't you made us any cakes yet, Luke? So I try not to tell too many people about this, but I think now it's on the podcast.
I think now you'll be getting a lot more demand.
Yeah, the secret's out, unfortunately. So yeah, I was really became passionate about the impact of business and how I can fit into that, and I really tried to also have like a sustainability element to it, because deeply ingrained within me is this like ethical side of how can business be successful while also having a positive change on the world. And that was really a first glimpse of that. And then I came to Warwick, so I study global sustainable development and business at Warwick, and that's all about how can business tackle the economic, social, environmental issues that we're facing today. So that's really given me a lot of theory and insights, but I'm really passionate about getting out there and really wanting to make a difference myself. So being the keen first year I joined another social enterprise called Food Intercept, and that was really successful and reignited my passion for social enterprise, business for good, in January 2019. So I was tricked into entering a competition by someone. They said, do you want to do it? I was like, maybe not. And they just wrote my name down, and being the quite competitive person I am, I was like, I'll just give it a go, see what happens. So this was the Enactus Social Innovation Hub. So they ran a competition where, first of all, we had to sell a load of sustainable products and then make some money for it, so to developing our sales skills. Mm-hmm. And then we had to redesign a product to make it more sustainable. And then the third challenge, which really bred the People's Backpack, was design a social enterprise that really makes a positive impact on the refugee crisis. So they told us a lot of shocking statistics, one of which, like the 40,000 people are displaced every day. I was really shook by that during this competition. Was like, well, this isn't really something I'd been deeply passionate about before, because oftentimes there's a lot of prejudice and stigma against refugees, and I wasn't really aware of the issues they were facing. And from then on, I became really passionate about it, and we ended up winning this competition with the idea for the People's Backpack. And then from there, we've been building it up, working with some amazing designers at the moment, trying to design and then produce a backpack made of sustainable materials. And we've got amazing people like Jay and Clara Tweety, who's making the video at the moment, hello, who are all working with us to really try and work together in creating an impact.
Okay, Luke, that's really good to hear. But how can people at home get involved? If they like what they're hearing and they're passionate about getting involved, what can they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's so many ways in which you as an individual can really help to support and empower refugees in your day-to-day life. So I think the first thing to do, helping refugees, helping people in general, is just try and be a good person. Be kind to people, love people, and try and support them in any way which you can, whether that's having a conversation with them, asking people how they are, and if you know there's refugees maybe in your local area, go out your way to be nice to them. I think that's really important. And say if you're at university, for example, there's an amazing organisation called Student Action for Refugees, or STAR, and they have conversations with refugees and asylum seekers, and go out their way to support them. If you're at university, go out your way to maybe join a Student Action for Refugee society, or if you don't have one, you've got no excuse, go out and create one yourself. I think another great way is to maybe work with an organisation such as Help Refugees or Are You Serious, who do volunteering projects where you can go out, volunteer at a refugee camp, go and support refugees. And I think firstly, that will really make an impact on their life. If you can change someone's life just for a day, it can make their day, it can make their week. It maybe having that conversation really changes their perspective and really provides a lot of support to them. And it will also change your attitude as well, because from the volunteering that I've done, it's really shifted my perspective and really shown the human side of the refugee crisis. And it can help you to go out and have these conversations, speak to people, and what we're doing on this podcast as well, speaking about refugees and trying to get their stories across.
If you want more information on any of those charities that Luke's mentioned, make sure to follow our Instagram and Facebook page at The People's Backpack, where our social media team will be posting loads of information about how you can get involved, and so you can keep up with the progress of the enterprise. Now, Luke, before I let you go, I suppose I should ask you one final question.
Yes.
What is the main goal? What do you hope to achieve from this project? How do you know you've reached a point of success?
Well, Jay, I think I know when I've reached success when the People's Backpack has collapsed.
Has collapsed.
So, Jay, you'll be out of a job. There'll be no People's Podcast. There'll be no People's Backpack, because I think this really came out of a need, out of a problem which our society is facing, in that refugees don't get the right amount of support for their education. They're facing a tremendous amount of stigma and prejudice in the media and on a day-to-day basis from people within society. And so if we're able to solve those problems, that's when I know that we've been able to contribute and really make an impact, and there won't be any need for the People's Backpack to exist at the end of the day. So when we go broke, when there's no need for us in society, I think that will be real success to me. In terms of a more short-term approach, because I don't think it's going to be as easy as I just said it was.
As you made it sound.
What we're going to be doing is we're designing backpacks at the moment, and then hopefully in the next couple months we can start to sell backpacks. We may do a Kickstarter campaign, some sort of crowdfunding campaign, just to give you a sneak preview of what might come. We hope to really build on this movement, changing the lives of refugees one at a time, changing people's attitudes towards refugees, and if we can continue to build on that and really build this movement which supports refugees, I think that will be really successful on all of our behalf.
Well, Luke, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Jay.
And thank you everyone for listening. Please stay tuned for our next few episodes. We're really going to try and put a human focus on the refugee crisis. If you'd like to get involved, again, follow our social media, and please let us know what you think.